Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Let's get right to the stories. I used to deliver pizzas on the weekend when I was in college. The town I worked in is very old and very haunted. One night I took an order to a street that has a railroad that runs parallel with it, and between the street and the railroad is a drainage ditch. Just before I turn into the driveway, which is on the right, something catches my eye on the left. I turn my head and catch a glimpse of a dark figure crouched down in the drainage ditch, peering from behind some weeds. For a good 3 seconds, I looked at this figure before my subconscious forced me to look back on the road so that I didn't wreck. As I walked up to the door of the house, I kept an eye out in the direction because my first thought was I was about to be robbed. As I knocked on the doorway, standing sideways to avoid being snuck up on, I kept thinking to myself whether that was a person or a spirit. The customer eventually opened the door and I gave them their stuff. Walking back to my car again, I kept an eye open in that direction. Once I safely inside my car with the doors locked, I could relax a little bit. I backed out of the driveway and made my way back to the store. When I passed by that spot, the figure was gone. I wonder how they could have moved without me hearing their feet crunch on gravel. Maybe they were laying down and I couldn't see them. Why were they solid black even though there was a street light nearby? Given the history of this town and the fact that those tracks are probably 200 years old, and the fact that in this town there was very little crime, especially robbery, it wouldn't surprise me if it was a spirit. I know this story probably isn't the scariest or most exciting, but I promise it is 100% true. So I used to live near an infamous road. It's a thin road with no street lines, has only a few houses at the end, and lined with thick woods. There were no street lights. We heard stories like ghosts being spotted in the woods, weird beasts, creepy vibes, and a penny thrown off a small bridge coming back to you. My boyfriend and I decided to drive down it one night in his car. It was a small stick shift car. The road has several pull-offs where you could park and sit. We pulled off at the first one and take some footage of the woods. Nothing happened, so we continued driving to the next pull-off. We parked and set off the car. We heard some rustling, but we both assumed it was an animal moving away from the sound of car parking. We sat for a few seconds in the dark of the woods. We heard something hit the car like a rock or something. We heard several pounds on the trunk and roof. At this point, we decided to drive off. He attempted to start the car to no avail. He tried this several times before it eventually started. He then pulled it into gear and stepped on the gas. The car stood still. I was freaking out and told him to stop messing around. He said he wasn't, and then the car, while in first gear and gas depressed, began to be pulled backwards against all logic. The car was fighting to go forward against something that wasn't viewable. The tail lights lit up the forest behind us, and there was nothing there. Out of nowhere, the car miracles jumps forward, and we drove away from the pull-off. Blown away by the experience we just had, we decided to find another pull-off. This was stupid. The one we found was before the bridge where pennies are thrown. We toddled to the bridge and threw a penny. We hear it hit the small stream. We look back at the car and swear we see someone walking behind it, so we rush back to the car, and there's no sign of anyone. This was the last straw, and we decided to get off the road ASAP. We get in the car and speed off. As we are driving, something small hits and chips our windshield. It did not sound like a rock. It sounded like a penny. Whatever was on the road either wanted us gone or to never leave. We haven't gone back since. So this happened to me in July of this year. Just to give context of where I was to discount any possibilities of wildlife explanations, at the time I lived in the Midwest in a suburban area, fairly populated near a very populated city. There was nowhere that could be considered rural within at least 40-mile radius. So anyways, to start my experience, it was late at night, and I was hanging out with my golden retriever, Leo, who was just turning a year old in a couple weeks at the time. I was just watching YouTube in my room while he lay on the floor next to me. It was about 12:30 a.m. and I was ready for bed, so I had to take him out before we both went to sleep. So got him on the leash and went outside. My family and I lived in a large apartment complex. The apartments have quite a few rooms and their own personal garage, but still have 8 to 10 apartments per building, so the buildings are very long and slim. Behind our building is a long strip of grass that goes about 15 feet, then a large tree line that is 20 feet deep and about 200 feet long. Leo and I go out to the front around the building to the back as we don't have an exit to the back. We are on the second floor and we all have our own separate entrances. We make it back to the grassy area and walk out into the grass with him to let him do his business. I am on my phone, not paying attention really, and we stand there for a good minute. I realize it's been a good amount of time and notice Leo hasn't moved one bit. I turn off my phone and look to him and realize he hadn't moved from the spot we stopped at and was looking at the other building right by the woods. He had been frozen the whole time. I pet him and he looked up at me, and when I stopped petting him to look straight back at the same spot, I hadn't at the time realized he was looking at that spot the whole time. And until then, I looked over to where he was looking. My eyes were not adjusted to the darkness and only could see the shadows of the building. The only source of light was street lights about 50 feet behind us. I looked back at him quietly and chuckled because I thought he just heard a squirrel and was all perked up. It was very cute, and I then looked back at my phone. Leo, in the corner of my eye, about 15 seconds later, flinched back as if he had been startled by something and started to whine. I looked over at the spot this time, realizing now he was scared of something he saw while we had been out there. My eyes were now adjusted to the dark. I saw what he was fixated on now. In the shadows of the building, right next to the corner of the wall in the front of the tree line, about 15 feet away from me, was that creature. I could only see a black outline as it was not lit up enough, but it was massive. I know how tall the building was relative to me when I was standing right next to the building. It was about 5 feet tall. That wouldn't be very tall if it was standing right upright, but this thing was on all fours. The best way I can describe how it looked is when a bulldog snarls and kind of flexes its front legs when trying to intimidate something, but scaled up to be 5 feet tall and had moved muscles, and its outline was much wider. There's no way that this was any creature in the Midwest. The only creatures that is remotely close to that is a black bear. The only way up north, nowhere near where I am, and I'm in the southeastern part of my state. There are no wood areas for a bear to live in anyways, as stated in the beginning. Plus, the max height of a bear on all fours is 3 feet, and not very broad. This thing surpassed that by a long shot, and was very broad. I jumped back in fear and was just frozen after that for a solid 30 seconds, just staring at it. I then backed away slowly, keeping my eye on it the whole time. Leo then began to growl and snarl at it, and we round the corner. Leo has never acted aggressive like that ever before, so this just made me even more terrified. I then peeked around the corner, no more than a second later, and it was gone. No noise, no shadow swiftly moving behind the building, just gone. There's no way something could have moved behind the building that fast without a sound, especially that size. This freaked me out more, and I sprinted back inside the house. I would really like to think that it was hallucinating this and was just tired, but it was clear as day, even during the night, lol. I have never told anyone this story before, and it freaks me out to this day. Quite a few years ago, when I was about 9 or 10, and we lived on campus, so it was easier for my mom to get to her classes. Every once in a while, we would come with her, like if we didn't have school or there was no one to watch us. One of these times during Christmas break, and we were walking home, there was someone following us, up close at first, but he lagged behind to about 50 or 60 feet behind us. My mom grabbed onto me and my brother's hands when she first noticed him, and when he started singing, me and my brother looked behind us, and she whispered, "Don't look at him, just keep walking." We asked her why. She just said, "He's just being weird. Don't make him feel bad," so she didn't scare us. Remember this? I remember this better than I remember a lot of things from my childhood. Most likely due to my mind seeing it as something weird. So I'll try and describe him. He was just wearing all black, winter gear, a hat, a scarf, a thin coat, and probably gloves too. Another thing, seeing as it was a winter evening, and it gets dark earlier where I live, the all-black clothing was pretty ominous, now that I think about it. He also was doing the weird walk where he kept his legs kind of straight, swinging them in kind of an arc with each step and looking down, avoiding our gaze so we couldn't see his face, especially in the dark. We walked a few blocks further before eventually he stopped singing and turned onto a different street, and we hurried home. We never saw or heard anything about him again. I didn't really understand what was happening at the time or why my mom seemed so nervous. I was just a child, and the only thing I cared about then was going home to warm up and eating dinner. But looking back at it now, I still don't know what he wanted, whether he was just trying to get my mom's number or trying to do something worse. Either way, he scared her. He was probably behind us for a while. I don't know how close, but definitely moving silently, because he only started singing and doing his weird walk after my mom noticed him behind us and told him to stay away from her. Whatever his intentions were, I hope I never have to go through something like that again. I just wish there was less creeps in the world. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment. If you will need to say something, subscribe so you never miss another one. Yeah.